controversy surrounding the authorship of this letter began when John Hay, who was Lincoln's personal secretary in the White House, toward the end of his life told several people that Hay, had actually written the letter. But John Hay told those folks not to reveal that until after John Hay, had died. And when they did so, a controversy arose. My personal belief about the authorship of the Bixby letter is that John Hay wrote it and that Abraham Lincoln signed it. The tip-off was the scrapbook. I discovered that because I was doing research at the John Hay Library on Lincoln in general, and one of the librarians had brought me a scrapbook and said, well, you might want to look at this. And most of the scrapbook contained writings by John Hay that dated after the Civil War. And I happened to notice that the Bixby letter was there. But I thought, why would he clip this out of the newspaper and paste it into a scrapbook of his own writings unless he wrote it? And so that led me to do the research in Hay's writings and in Lincoln's writings. It has John Hay's stylistic fingerprints all over. For example, John Hay regularly used the word beguile. Lincoln never did. John Hay often used the word assuage. Lincoln never did. And John Hay was a very gifted writer. He was a Brown University graduate, and he had been the class poet. He wrote poems that became celebrated, and he was regarded as one of the pioneers of the vernacular school of American literature. I've read everything that John Hay wrote that I could lay my hands on, and in addition, what I discovered, which previous historians hadn't realized, is that John Hay, when he was serving as Lincoln's personal secretary in the White House, wrote for newspapers regularly, giving an administration spin to the news. And I uncovered these, and I published them as a series of articles that was known as Lincoln's Journalist. Lincoln's schedule was very busy at that time. He was busy composing his annual message to Congress, which today we would call the State of the Union message. And I think what happened when Lincoln received the letter from the governor of Massachusetts, he said, John, I'm very busy right now. Would you please write a letter of condolence? And John Hay, given his mastery of English prose style, dashed off this letter. Lincoln signed it, and off it went. There's more to the story than just the authorship. Mrs. Bixby told the adjutant general that she had lost 5 sons, when in fact she had only lost 2. In effect, she was a kind of welfare cheat, trying to get money for having lost 5 sons. The 3 sons who survived, one of them deserted to the Confederate Army, another one may have done so, and the other was honorably discharged. On top of that, the notion that she was a kind of gold star patriotic mother is very misleading. According to some accounts, she ran a whorehouse in Boston. She had been raised in Richmond, Virginia, and didn't like Lincoln, and she tore up the letter when she got it. There are some people who argue that if you suggest that Abraham Lincoln did not actually write the Bixby letter, that you are anti-Lincoln. Well, that I don't believe is the case at all. One of the things we should take away from this story is that John Hay was an unusually gifted writer, and that far from detracting from Lincoln's reputation, that any man who wrote the second inaugural address, in which he said, fondly do we hope, fervently do we pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. And similarly with the Gettysburg Address. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. A man who could write sentences like that never needs to worry that his literary reputation will be eclipsed.
We should say that Mike